Greetings, my friends. Reform Stoic here. I do not see any reason this video has to be very long. For reals. For really, really reals. So let's get to it. Parents, what do you do if your son, specifically, maybe this could work for a daughter, I don't know. I'm basing this off of my experience in high school. Some background. Well, let me finish the title. What do you do if your son is a party kid? How do you put your son on a better path? How do you save your kids? Maybe this could work for a daughter. I'm basing this off of my high school experience. For some background, I was a goody two-shoes kid, never had a drink, never smoked weed, never did anything bad, really, other than eating candy and staying up late and yada yada. None of that started for me until my junior year of high school. I got high off marijuana cigarettes for the first time when I was 16 years old, the summer leading to my junior year of high school. I believe I drank like a week or two before that. Just kind of came out of nowhere. I started hanging out with these long hair rock and roll people who I played music with, and they're like, "Oh, dude, you gotta try weed, you gotta get drunk." And I was curious, and I was just ready for a change. And so that was that. That's really all the background I feel that you need. I just know how fast your life can spiral out of control, but I was most certainly a latchkey kid well before that. And I guess you could say my problems, the one thing I was doing wrong before that would be looking at pornography. But that's an entirely different story, different video. So what do you do? Because I know firsthand what it's like to, my parents caught me smoking weed maybe like 6 months after I started. If I remember right, I sure had a good run. It was sure a good run, leaving. My parents had all the trust in the world in me that first 6 months or whatever of getting high. It's hard for me to not look back on that as good times. I believe me and my friends were outside. We were stacking wood or something. My dad had asked us to get wood, and we thought we'd go ahead and load up a bowl out there. And my dad came out and said, "You guys are busted. You guys are busted." We didn't know he was going to go to the store or whatever. So anyway, I got caught about 6 months in. Let's go ahead and get to the advice. I know what it's like, how, obviously my parents told me to stop. It didn't matter. Frankly, my parents were never home. So, first off, step one is going to be trying for your kids to never get there. You're going to want to have your kids on a better upbringing than I had. Somebody's got to be home. This is what boomers seemed to not understand. Somebody has to be home. Kids home alone in an empty house. A television is not a babysitter. I can understand if you gotta work. You gotta get a babysitter, and you gotta vet your babysitters. And if it's gonna be daycare, you gotta vet the daycare. You gotta look at reviews. You gotta talk at other people who've put their kids through. If somebody has an older kid, take a look at how their kid turned out. There needs to be effort. There is no easy, Staples easy button for your kid's childhood. You gotta supervise your kids while they're doing homework. I'd recommend no overnights. That's probably the solid golden rule. Maybe for birthday parties and special events, your kid simply, I recommend highly, no overnights every weekend. Their other friends are going to be having overnights. Maybe let them hang out and not stay the night. But so step one is you try not to let them get to that point. But this advice is going to be necessary regardless, because I know plenty of kids who, their parents had a more strict upbringing. They did more chores than me. They maybe weren't allowed to do overnights. It doesn't matter. They still became a party kid. They still become this kid who's sneaking out, drinking, doesn't give a fuck about anything, trying to sleep with lots of women, grades are slipping, weed, booze is a standard, maybe just booze. I mean, chances are they're gonna screw around with cocaine and they're gonna go down that slippery slope. What do? Ultimatum involving boarding school or military school or like, I don't know, rehab school. I don't really know what kind of like boarding school, military schools are out there. That actually might be like a good rabbit hole for me to go down. But there needs to be an ultimatum. Now, maybe you can't afford boarding school. Maybe you can't afford military school. And if that's the case, their free time needs to evaporate. You need to break your kid. And I feel like the easier solution, like I'm not really sure what it would look like if you can't afford boarding school or military school, because I'm just thinking of the mindset that I had when I was in high school. I had to be at the parties. I had to smoke weed. I had to be with my friends. And a lot of this precedent was just set by the upbringing that I had until that point. My parents were never going to break me. When I was a senior in high school, I was dog sitting and house sitting for a friend of my mom, and I threw all these raging parties, and you know, people were fighting in the basement, and they stole cigars, and they stole this guy's Cialis pills, or he had one of whatever those like Enzyte big dick pills. They stole his pills, they stole their cigars, smoked cigars in the bathroom, quarters on the table, cigarette butts all over the place. And you know, basically I got a stern talking to. And I think I was grounded for a couple of weeks. I was out partying, doing the same shit. A couple of weeks later, it just really didn't matter. I'm sorry, I just have to flat out say my parents did not do a good job raising me at all. They also did not do a good job handling when I became a party kid. So the first time you catch your kid partying, you say, "Listen, son, you have to know that I want the best for you." Because the emphasis cannot be on punishment. When you set this like Machiavellian standard where it's just all about punishment and it's not about what's best for your kids, that's when they're never going to trust you. And that standard had been set my entire life through my narcissist father. I knew it was always about punishment. I had never got the idea that my parents cared about what was best for me. It's like, son, I want you to be successful. I know you're smart. I know you're smarter than your friends. That might not be true, but say it anyway. I know you're smarter than your friends. I want you to be a success. I want you to be a man who's worthy of marriage and finding a good woman and being a father. I want you to make good money. I don't want you to be a burnout failure. So I'm going to tell you what. You're grounded for a week, and if I catch you partying or drinking or doing drugs again, like, you have to stop right now. And you might, like, I know how it was. I had all kinds of friends who partied, and I partied. And the thing is, son, is that I'm not going to let you go through what I went through. And if I catch you partying again, you're going to military school. And there's no begging, and there's no leniency, and there's no pleading. And I think the emphasis here is on how greasy and shitty and disgusting the kind of people that are going to be around your kids are. These kids are the number one influence on your kids at this point. They're rebelling. They don't care about mom and dad. You guys are stupid. You don't know anything. And it's all about impressing Mr. Cool, who sleeps with a bunch of women, and your son wants to sleep with a bunch of women like them. Hopefully you've raised them religious, specifically Roman Catholic. Hopefully they've been good Catholic boys, and they're going to mass every Sunday and they're, doing a bunch of stuff through their church, and hopefully they never get to this point. But the thing is that you could possibly do everything right as a kid, and they get dragged off with these Lord of the Flies hoodlums who are smoking oxy, and like they're bound to be loser fentanyl addicts and fentanyl dealers someday. And women love these guys, and your son's just trying to get women, and they're just trying to emulate what gets women, which in high school and for most of life is losers. Okay. So that's pretty much it. That is pretty much it, because the mindset is that you've lost them at that point. They're not going to listen to you anymore. You have to break them. And if you break them like in the house, like you can't afford boarding school, that's going to be rough. They're going to sneak out. They're going to try to sneak out. You basically need to turn your house into a prison. You need to hire a babysitter who's like the equivalent of Mike. You need to hire Mike from Breaking Bad to be your babysitter. I don't think so, kid. Hey, listen, you're going to sit here with me and we're going to watch TV. And if you leave, I'm going to kill your entire family with a silencer. But my parents are paying you. Does that look like my problem? I recommend boarding school, military school. And if that day comes, I'm sorry, Dad. I promise. I love you, son. I'm doing this because I love you. All your friends are losers, and most of them aren't going to amount to shit. And you're going to thank me for this someday. Don't run away. Don't get in trouble. Do the right thing. Deep down, you know what the right thing is. Get good grades. Take this as an opportunity to improve yourself. Work out hard. Study hard. This is it. You fucked up. You're going to military school, son. Heidi ho, Ten hut, whatever. And, do the research. Maybe boarding school is a better option. Maybe some sort of a more intellectual field. I gotta be honest, these days, military school is not the military period these days is just kind of not really as much of a thing that I would recommend. So maybe more like a boarding school, maybe more like a rehab school. Maybe, maybe sending them to rehab. But the thing is I have to end the video by saying this. I know a kid who was sent to rehab, and he came back, and all of 3 months later, he was out partying again, just as bad as ever. I know a kid here who went to military school. He came back, and he lost a bunch of weight, and he was in way better shape, and he was better with women, but he still partied, and he grew up to be one of the biggest loser heroin addict, fentanyl addicts in this town. So it doesn't automatically stop there. I think the key is not focusing on the punishment. It's not, you're a little shit, and yeah, have fun at military school, you little shit. That's what you get for crossing me. They need to know that you love them and care about them, and that it's for the best. You want your kids to win. And lastly, if you can afford for your kids to not go to public school, if you can put them in some sort of a private school out the get-go, I'm sorry, guys. I know money is an issue. Some people can't afford military school. You can't afford boarding school. You can't afford private school. You get what you put in, man. If you put your kids in public education, there's going to be consequences, okay? Public school sucks. And, yeah, military is kind of like an extension of public school, if you ask me. So, ultimatum, and they get shipped off. That is the only possible way, in my mind, to stop your kids from ruining themselves in this rebellion phase. So that's what I got. Looking forward to some feedback in the comments. Maybe you guys know somebody who went to military school or boarding school. Maybe you went to boarding school. I'm thinking about going down a boarding school, military school rabbit hole and seeing what people have to say about it. Do some research beforehand. Yeah, I've heard some of the horror stories about how there's weird trafficking shit that goes through these schools. Look out for that, okay? It's a risk. Everything is a risk. Your whole fucking family, excuse my language, could get leveled by a car when you're walking across the sidewalk or the crosswalk. Shit happens, all right? It's tough love. It's going to be tough love. Obviously, if something happened, if your son like killed himself in military school, you'd never forgive yourself. But the thing is if you don't do anything, your kid might be one of the kids who overdoses in fentanyl when he's 20 or when he's 19. So it's food for thought. Looking forward to your guys' thoughts on this. God bless.